What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the North Shore Drive from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's podcast network. This is not Chris Carter. This is Brian Batko filling in on hosting duties today. Carter finally gets a day or a week or a couple days off or something. But either way, I'm here with you. Going to be joined by Jason Mackey, columnist. We're going to go through a smorgasbord of Pittsburgh sports topics. As always, the show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, located across the street from PNC Park on the North Shore. Hundreds of local craft beers available. If that's what you want, if that's what's on your bucket list, no place better in Pittsburgh to try those beers. Enjoy a sporting event. It's Yinzerpalooza weekend. It's all going to be a great time. Make Mike's part of your plan. All their big screen TVs, any game you desire. Elevate your experience with Mike's Steak on a Stone. Cut and cook your own choice of meat to your desired temperature. Visit Mike's Beer Bar today. When you get there, tell them we sent you. Let's get into the North Shore Drive with Jason Mackey. We'll talk some Steelers, talk a little bit of Pitt basketball, and of course, we'll talk some Buccos as they get ready to start the second half of their season. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
Once again, no Christopher Carter, but Jason and I will do our best. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. I finally made it back home from Texas by way of Atlanta in an extra night. I got stranded in Atlanta last night, but I'm here, doing well. Happy to talk to you.
Did you sleep in the airport, or did you at least go get a hotel room?
I got a hotel room. Yeah,
That's the Atlanta airport is the only airport I've ever actually slept in and stayed overnight. It was not even for work travel. I was probably in like middle school or junior high and was visiting family with my grandma, and we got a flight canceled or something. I was too young to even remember the details or the travel itinerary that went awry there, but I specifically remember I think I like laid down on one of the things, and her grandmother maternal instinct kicked in. She's like covering me with newspapers. I'm just like, I don't really need this, but I guess it's just sort of what people do in an airport, sleeping, especially old people.
I can't say I've ever slept in an airport, Brian. I don't know about you. Like, I can't sleep on planes. I can't sleep in an airport. I cannot sleep unless it's my own bed or a hotel room or something. Like even yesterday.
I can sleep on planes. Just
you jerk.
Especially with a window seat. Can you sleep in cars?
No, I don't think so. I don't remember the last. I don't travel much where I'm not the one driving. Maybe I'll learn in Steelers season when we're traveling together. I'll find out if I can go to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I can sleep in most travel circumstances, but yeah, the airport is not really a glamorous place to be. I think we just had a late flight canceled and then an early flight was what we were able to connect on, so it sort of made sense. But yeah, that was miserable. I did see the actor Eddie Griffin though walking through the Atlanta airport, so I always have that memory. I think he was in like a Lakers jumpsuit or something. So a little celebrity sighting. All right, we're getting off track here. We've got some Pittsburgh sports news to get into. It's a Friday show before the weekend. Carter's not here. Adam Bittner's not here. It's like our parents are gone and we have the house to ourselves.
The substitute teacher's in.
Yeah, exactly.
All hell's broken loose.
Yeah, just put the projector up and see what happens. But all right, for those who did make it through those 3.5 minutes, let's lead with Steelers officially naming their Bill Hillgrove replacement. He's irreplaceable, but the next guy who's going to succeed Billy as the play-by-play voice of the franchise, I think it was everybody's leader in the clubhouse throughout most of the offseason. Rob King, you did a big column on him just about a month or two ago.
Yeah.
Jason, he's been around the Steelers a lot, and he's ramped that up, I think, even more since Bill retired from calling Steelers. He's still going to do Pitt football and men's basketball at the ripe age of 83, in case you missed that in late February. But yeah, Rob King is going to be the voice of it. And man, what a responsibility it is, but also what a great opportunity it is for an organization that has had just legends like Bill Hillgrove, like Myron Cope coming through that chair.
Yeah, Kinger deserves it, man. He really does. That was the point of my column, that I don't think we appreciate Rob King enough for what he means to this city, and not just Steelers. I mean, now that'll be a big part of his brand, but me being over on the Pirates side, I mean, Rob King does such a tremendous job on that end and Penguin stuff. And there's nothing that he can't do. That was part of our discussion. Just like, how do you go from writing to producing to putting together packages, voiceovers and play-by-play and all this stuff. Like I've always been impressed with his versatility. But I mean, Brian, you've seen Rob and him being over Steelers, by the way, that kind of raised my antenna as well. I'm like, man, he is here a lot.
And he was saying, they do those off-season, like in-house media interviews, sit-downs with players and stuff that normally Bill Hillgrove would host, and Rob was doing a lot of that. So
yeah,
that's why many of us, when we were asked, hey, who's going to be the next radio play-by-play guy, a lot of us went right to Rob's name.
Yeah, and I mean, he does a fantastic job, and I'm excited for him. You won't meet a nicer guy in this profession. They would have gone right either way, in my opinion, if they would have. Like I was thinking of people that would make sense to me, like Pompiani would obviously be one. I don't know how that would work out with, stuff with KDKA, but yeah, there were quite a few names that you heard about.
Sure they had plenty of applicants because this is like a holy grail type of job when it comes to play-by-play in the NFL. For sure. The Steelers change radio play-by-play announcers about as often as they change head coaches. So
yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear the play. And you know what? It made me reflect a little bit on Hillgrove and how much of his voice is just attached to memories and highlights. And you just take it for granted, I think. We just assume that that's going to be there and it's going to sound the same. And well, no, it's not. And it's a really important season for the Steelers, and Rob King's going to be providing the soundtrack. And I just, I think it's going to sound really good. I've heard his play-by-play. We've obviously seen his, studio work and voiceovers and stuff. But yeah, really excited to get into the play-by-play stuff. Are you a listen to play-by-play during the game type?
So I usually put on the TV broadcast. Like I'll kind of listen to that in headphones because you never know what the sideline reporter might be digging up down there from CBS or NBC or whatever. So sometimes I'll have that on in the press box, but not all the time. But yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I think obviously Rob's not from here. He's from Cooperstown, New York originally, but he's been here for 25 years. So I think a job like, doing this for the Steelers, as much as there would be great applicants from the outside and people who could bring a fresh perspective from different cities, I think people would be a little bit resistant to you if you haven't been around these parts for quite a while like he has. I mean, there's just so much in the culture and the tradition, that institutional knowledge that you sort of need to know to do this job and make people happy with it, I believe. So yeah, good pick by the Steelers, obviously, and it'll be fun to have Rob around more often. Other piece of Steelers news that we can get into here in the first segment, a reunion signing on Wednesday, which they seem to love to do, bringing back old Dirty Red Tyler Matakevich, 7th round pick back in 2016. Man, it doesn't feel that long ago, but out of Temple, and he was a guy who never really played much linebacker for the spot starts or appearances here and there, but clearly became a special teams demon. And then got that same title in Buffalo, and was even a Bills special teams captain the last 4 years. He was without a home for most of this offseason, which I didn't realize, but they brought him back on a 1-year deal Wednesday night. It probably doesn't mean much for the equation on defense, but it's another name they're throwing into the ring and throwing into the mix to maybe win a job on special teams.
Yeah, and depth at linebacker is fine. I think we saw last season, what that can do. We can sit here right now and look at their starters and everything and think that's great, and they've improved that room, but you never know how many you need. I think if I've learned anything, Brian, you would know this a lot more than me, but it's the Steelers are often swayed by character or what they believe is character.
Like too, for sure.
Yeah, like knowing the person, having a relationship, that sort of thing. And I mean, you can certainly find a football need, but I feel like with Matakevich, kind of what you're saying is like, we know this guy. We know what he's about. We believe he can help us. We believe we can find a use for him. We sort of have, an opportunity on defense. We know we'll have an opportunity on special teams. So, I mean, just like when he was here the first time, I don't expect him to play some sort of massive game-shifting role, but you need guys like that, and you need depth, as we saw last season.
Yeah, he'll probably have to fight for a job in Latrobe, much like some of their other reunion signings in recent years. I'd probably put him in the B.J. Finney category, Josh Dobbs category, and guys who were far from stars or standouts here, but yes, played a certain role, played it well, and the coaching staff clearly knows them and likes them a lot. They brought in another a couple inside linebackers last year in the summer, and Tanner Muse in free agency, and then Nick Witkowski from Bethel Park. And neither one of those guys ended up making it, but I mean, they just want competition as much as they can in every room. And somebody like Matakevich provides that. And if he is able to survive that numbers game, he and Miles Killebrew, that's a pretty darn good 1-2 punch to have on your coverage units and just doing all the dirty work in the third phase of the game.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but with the kickoff rules changing, like there has to be something to having somebody who has his feet under him special team wise. Like I know Tyler Matakevich isn't returning kicks, but there's 10 other guys involved in that play, both in returning them and covering them. Like I would imagine Matakevich has some sort of lens on that. Maybe I'm completely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the flip side of it would be he's never done it either, because nobody in the NFL has really been part of this unless they've been in the XFL or one of those other leagues. But yeah, I think there's just something to be said for when you check all the other boxes for knowing what it takes to be an elite special teamer at this level. It probably gives you some confidence and some security if you're Mike Tomlin that you'll be able to adjust to this new frontier on the kickoff front. So, all right. Anything else Steelers you wanted to touch on, Jason, before we move on?
I think that's good. It's pretty quiet, right?
Absolutely, yes. It's not going to be quiet next week. Training camp, report day on Wednesday, first practice on Thursday, and then they're going throughout all of next weekend. So we will have plenty of written content as well as shows and videos here to keep you abreast of what's going on out at St. Vincent College in Latrobe. When we come back, talk a little Pitt hoops. They made some waves Wednesday night as well, not long before the Steelers signed Tyler Matakevich. Contract extension for head men's basketball coach Jeff Capel. We'll talk about that next on the North Shore Drive, brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar over on the North Shore. Great place to be this weekend for Yinzer Palooza, Pirates, Phillies, 3 games, Picklesburg. You should definitely make Mike's Beer Bar, whether it's all their local craft beers that they have on tap, the steak on a stone, the scallops on a stone are a personal favorite of mine as well when I'm there. You should definitely make that one of your stops if you're in the fine city of Pittsburgh this weekend. We'll be right back here on the North Shore Drive. Moving right along, Brian Batko and Jason Mackey here on the North Shore Drive podcast. We talk a lot of Steelers. This time of year, we also talk a lot of Pirates, and rightfully so on these shows. We don't always get into Pitt men's basketball or football as much as we should, or have some audience that wants it. But, I think I've seen some, divisive opinions on this move so far via social media. Well, I'll let you have the floor then, Jason. Jeff Capel, Pitt men's basketball head coach, 3-year contract extension announced by the university earlier this week. To you, it's a no-brainer?
Yes, very much so. And I don't understand this whole one tournament appearance in 6 years. They should have gone this year. I don't hold that against Capel. They made the ACC semifinals. And what did you want him to do? Go in year 1 and year 2 of his tenure when he took over a hot mess that went 0-18 in the ACC? And the fact that he didn't, we're hanging it over his head right now? I mean, my goodness. I completely agree with the extension, Brian. I love it. I love what Jeff Capel has built over there. I think, he has created something that now you lose Bub Carrington, you lose Blake Hinson, as you should. I mean, that's the way the system works. And they're going to be able to replace them with guys from the transfer portal, guys you've recruited. You've got remaining players. He has done his job with getting players to the league. I don't know what more you would want out of Jeff Capel. To me, it's again, an easy decision for Heather Lyke. You've got both Jeff Capel and Pat Narduzzi now signed through 2030. That's a good thing for the Pitt athletic department, have that sort of continuity. So I've seen the dissenting opinions too. Maybe you have one. I don't know. Feel free to disagree with me, but I don't understand being anything but happy with what Jeff Capel has done at Pitt. He's brought them back to relevancy.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have a dissenting opinion, but for the sake of just playing devil's advocate and stoking the conversation a bit, I've just seen out there the perspective of, well, why now? I mean, is it really necessary to do? And I think the public perception a little bit is just, it seems like such a 180 from, oh man, I remember talking to Craig Meyer at the end of his tenure covering Pitt hoops for us. It was 2 or 3 years ago, where it seemed like Capel was, down to those final sands in the hourglass for his tenure. I mean, it just hadn't happened. Some of his biggest recruiting gets did not stay for the length of their careers. They guys like Trey McGowan's and Xavier Johnson and Audi's Tony transferred, and just nothing was really going his way. He wasn't catching any breaks, and there was it seemed like a groundswell of, hey, if they didn't have this large buyout in his contract, they should just fire him now, and maybe they should anyway. And then it's just 2 or 3 years later, not only is he still in the chair, but he's getting an extension. So, I mean, that's where I think you see some people wondering, is this necessary? But, I mean, we've talked about this. I mean, back when I covered Pitt football and even since then around the city, this conversation often comes up with Pat Narduzzi contract-wise. I think a lot of times in college athletics, it's more so about that veil of security when you're selling yourself in living rooms to parents, players, families. I mean, you want to have those years on paper backing you up to say, I'm going to be here a really long time. You know, I'm committed to this. That's why you should commit to me. Maybe it's all out the window now in the NIL era and none of that stuff matters. But I think that's always a part of it when you see these, at least to people on the outside who have normal jobs, when you see these premature or, you know, extensions into years that we can't even really see that far down the line at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. I understand. But at the same time, if that keeps Capel at Pitt, if that's what it takes, I mean, I'm sure Heather didn't just drive into work, the other day and be like, wow, man, you know what I've had on my to-do list is to extend Jeff Capel. I really, if I can get all these other things taken care of, I'm just going to get there. I'm willing to bet there's a reason they're extending Jeff Capel and to keep him at Pitt. You want to keep your coaches happy if they're winning and productive. If they're not, if they stink, get rid of them. I understand that. But to me, Jeff Capel has done what you want him to do. I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, you can ask him to win an NCAA tournament championship or whatever, but I mean, I'm
for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, I am perfectly fine with what he inherited and the progress that they've made. I understand what the timeline looked like, what you were outlining with the end of Craig Meyer's tenure, et cetera. And as you were talking, Brian, I was looking up the 2022-2023 Pitt Panthers. And I mean, maybe that ends up being the group that sort of changed things for Jeff Capel. I mean, that was when they finally broke through, getting back to the tournament. And Blake Hinson is a huge part of that. Jamarius Burton, Nellie Cummings, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot of good names on that team, and they were just able to continue that. I think it was building to a point there, but, I just see Jeff Capel's tenure. It changed a lot from the days we're talking about because of the transfer portal. And there's another great opportunity here because of the transfer portal trying to replenish. It's what you have to do in college athletics today, in my opinion. I think not firing him, but balking on an extension would have been foolish.
And there is some excitement, some optimism growing for next year's team with Jalen Lowe back running the point, some of those off-season additions. And yeah, it is wild, 10 years ago to be sitting here talking about the high school recruits, and not even, even at the beginning of his time here at Pitt, we were talking about the way he was able to go out and land some top-notch high school recruits. That's pretty much out the window unless you're Kentucky, Duke, teams like that, UConn maybe. Everybody else, it's about what you're doing in the transfer portal. So that'll ultimately define much of what Jeff is able to do here through the rest of this extension, and hopefully for him and Pitt beyond that, because that'll mean he has them in a good place and doing a good job. All right, we're going to get to the third segment. Got to talk some Pirates because hopefully shortly after you listen to this, they'll be throwing that first pitch of the second half of the season, coming out of the All-Star break. Another team with some optimism, with a prognosis that is seemingly better than it was maybe a month ago because of those recent developments. We'll get into that with Jason here on the last segment of the North Shore Drive. It's going to be a fun weekend to be at PNC Park. Pirates, Phillies, again, the Yinzer Palooza. I think there's a Wiz Khalifa bobblehead at some point going on this weekend. I mean, if I were...
A rapping bobblehead, Brian. A rapping Wiz Khalifa. It raps.
Wow. Initially I saw that and I was kind of like, it's a cool idea. I like it. I don't need it. Now I might need it. Now I might need to find a way to get there Saturday evening. Do we know what it says, or is that all?
We do. They were playing it on the broadcast. There's a really funny thing that you can find on social media. It's Greg Brown playing the Wiz Khalifa rapping bobblehead, and he and Matt Capps pseudo dancing in just horrible, ugly fashion. And you might, if you turn it up loud enough, you might be able to hear it. But I know what I saw of it, I was not able to recognize. I'm sure it's black and yellow, right? I mean, that
would make the most
ridiculous
sense
to not have that be what he's rapping.
But maybe I'll like try to use some iMovie skills to like dub it with the most vulgar Wiz Khalifa lyrics that I can think of. So
there you go.
That. But
I wish they would have had a Joe Block bobblehead, a rapping Joe Block bobblehead.
There's still time for that for 2025 Yinzerpalooza, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I mean, and anybody who watches the Pirates, they're probably aware, like Joe Block is like seriously into rap, hip hop. He like knows his stuff. And if you look at Joe Block, he is the last person you would expect to be into rap and hip hop. And he's all about him. Like, they should have a rapping Joe Block.
Can't judge a block by its cover. So
no.
All right. Well, let's talk about the team itself. Starting off a 3-game homestand here against the Phillies. What do you got for me, Jason? Obviously, you were down there in Arlington, and you've talked plenty with Andrew Destin and others about the All-Star game experience, Paul Skeens-a-Palooza, Brian Reynolds. But what do you want to spin forward from your trip down there, just for kind of what it means for this team going down the stretch here into the pivotal weeks and days before the trade deadline, and whether there will be any action?
So I'm going to share a conversation I had with Brian Reynolds on Tuesday before the All-Star game. We were talking about 2019. And that's the last time that the Pirates have really been in contention at the break. They entered that one, I think, 3 games under 500, 2.5 out of first place, something like that. And anybody who's a Pirates fan watching this knows what happened after. That was, the trigger point for 4-24. Things just went very much awry, and it was the worst second half of a Pirates season in a long time. I think there's
collapse.
Yes. Well, and not only that, Brian, I mean, I'm talking, Kyle Crick and Keone Kela fighting coaches and Felipe Vasquez and
too slight of a word. Maybe
Clint Hurdle fired the last day of the season. Clint Hurdle saying that he had assurances that his job was safe and it was not. And yeah. So anyway, the goal is to avoid that, right? Like you want to come out of the break strong.
Can't go any worse than that, right?
No, you can't. They went into the break really well. And won 7 of 10 to get back to 500. The key for me is their offense. That's what's going to, if they can figure out some consistency. Obviously, going into the trade deadline, they have an opportunity and should add to that offense. I think they will. They've been trying like heck to do it. But if they can score some more runs, they have the pitching to make it work. And I think that's going to be the key to a great second half for them.
Are you on board with our columnist Joe Starkey's take on Thursday morning that they need to basically make the Oakland A's an offer they can't refuse? And, the big fish out there, the outfielder Brent Rooker, or the slugger that they've got, who's, maybe going to be available, maybe somebody they'd want to keep, under their own roof. But at age 29, is it just time to cut bait if you're the rudderless A's? What do you make of Joe saying that, and, him pretty much taking the stance that it's, the Pirates' obligation, they owe it to themselves, the fan base, to try to seize upon everything that they have working in their favor at this time?
Well, I am with Joe in the sense that the Oakland A's are a great team to target, and that the Pirates should be going all in on doing something. They owe it to their fans. It's been a crappy couple of years. I've covered them, and they've been saying all along, when we have a major league deficiency, we have the money, the resources, the desire to go out and the prospects and all of it to go get it. We're here. You have a deficiency in the outfield and you need a bat. The only thing I would disagree with, Brian, is I actually like J.J. Bleday a little bit better. He's another one of their outfielders who is rumored as a trade candidate. I just think there's more athleticism there. You're trading power for a little bit more gap to gap, a little bit better on base. I think I'd have to look up contracts, but I think you have them for a little bit longer. I mean, we can
maybe look at the logjam too, because as Joe pointed out in his column, you could run into some thorny circumstances there with Rooker's DHing, Andrew McCutchen is
right.
A little bit of a puzzle piece that doesn't fit together there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on return too, right? Like if for Bleday, the Athletics are coming back saying, we want Bubba Chandler, Braxton Ashcraft, and Tamar Johnson, then you're going to say, well, no, thank you. We'll take the other guy. So I get that. But anyway, I mean, Is it time to make a trade? Do they need to do something to address this? Yes, it's long overdue. So I'm with Joe 100%. It's just, if you could give me one player, I think Bleday is a better fit for them.
Well, before we get out of here, do you want to get into the prediction business at all for how the Pirates hold up this weekend against Philly?
Sure.
With the NL East leaders coming to town. And I'll tell you, like, honestly, Jason, I don't follow Major League Baseball as much as I used to, but the Phillies still have a lineup that I look down there and I'm like, okay, these are some dudes. So,
yep.
I mean, that's one of the like, if you showed me the A's lineup right now, I'd be like, all right, yeah. I'm not sure. If you gave me like 9 players on the A's and said, "Is this a current major league starter or a kid from my son's t-ball team," which is also the A's, I don't think I would go 100% on that exercise. But the Phillies clearly, they're still a powerhouse and a team to be reckoned with here.
Dude, so when I was on hockey with Wenzel, we would play a game. I forget what the counter was, but it was either name a fake person or a Pirates player or something. Like I would drop a Pirate and he'd have to tell me if it was real or if he played another. I forget what our catch was, but the idea was that he didn't follow the Pirates, did not care. And
we should have played that instead of
right.
Segment.
Yeah. Phillip Evans. Is he a real baseball player? Yes
that
or
guy's
no?
Real. That guy is real.
I got to go deeper cuts then. I'm going to say they take 1 of 3 against the Phillies. I want to get all excited and say they win 2 of 3 on Yinzer Palooza, but I think there's a little bit of a slow start to the second half. I think they've got to kind of ratchet it back up, and I say they lose Friday, win Saturday, lose Sunday.
The power of Wiz will be behind them on Saturday, but then I guess the sauerkraut Saul plush is going to drag them down on Sunday as that promotional giveaway. I'm keeping an eye on games to take my kid to. And
I was going to say, you sound like a dad who's eyeing the best ticket to grab.
I am, and he's pretty big into the pierogi race and the pierogies themselves, and I think Saul's his favorite. But I think instead of taking him this weekend when prices might be a bit exorbitant and it's going to be pretty hot and just crowded and sticky down there, I might push it forward to Sesame Street Day next month with the mini Grover plush is available from what I've seen.
There you go.
So that could be good. Although when I took my son to Sesame Street Day last time, he was disappointed that the Sesame Street people weren't playing in the game. He wanted Big Bird to be at first base and Grover and Elmo in the middle infield. So I'm going to have to do a better job of explaining that.
Brian, I've covered some Pirates teams where that might be an upgrade. I mean, I understand maybe he wanted those for baseball reasons. I don't know what Elmo's WAR is, but if he can get on base and he doesn't look at a called third, or if he's not, getting caught looking at third strikes a lot, put him in.
Yeah, Big Bird is a corner infield option the rest of the way. Is
Big Bird's got to play first base, right? You got to take advantage of that height.
I would think so. Yeah, I don't know if he's a lefty or not, but all right. On that note, for Jason Mackey, I'm Brian Batko. Thanks as always for tuning into the B team here on the North Shore Drive podcast.
Yeah.
No Chris Carter here to steer the ship. Thanks as always to Mike's Beer Bar for bringing this show to you all out there. Appreciate it. Enjoy the second half of Pirate season. Get ready for Steelers training camp coming up next week. We will talk to you guys soon. Thanks as always for joining us here on the North Shore Drive from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.